iPhone 15 Pro Max, which looks 99% the same with its previous model. So how are we gonna notice the new Apple flagship? Of course, from its new material. Titanium, the exclusive material on Pro series. And you will be surprised when you hold it.
好轻啊!
A 6.7-inch iPhone, but it's almost the same with the smaller 14 Pro. And with the increase of the size, the weight will separate more uniformly. The sharp edges now crafted more rounded. Very small change of design, but definitely a big improvement of hand grip. And it is not something very noticeable, but you will immediately feel the difference once you play the 14 and 15 on your hand. Not only it is more comfortable to hold, but also no longer cutting your finger when sliding to the edge of the screen. Overall, 15 Pro Max wouldn't make you feel like holding a Pro Max, unless one day you dropped it. In order to have the most realistic experience, I decided not to put on the case this time, but I dropped it when taking photos. That incident, I took 90% responsibilities and 10% on iPhone 15. Since the phone is very large already, I should have been more careful when holding it, but I didn't expect that the polishing on the back of the Pro Max was so slippery. Frosted texture is looking good and also sounds good. But the sound it made when fell down the ground won't be that pleasant. iPhone 15 Pro Max is finally equipped with a decent telephoto lens. This makes it look more like a flagship phone. 5x optical zoom, 120mm equivalent focal length, although 10x is missing, but it's quite enough for taking city view photos. The virtualization is not strong due to the smaller sensor on phone, but we could utilize the telephoto. And the compression which created by telephoto is very different with the scene we actually see. It gives a wonderful feeling. So whether it's shooting cultural art or city view, I will switch it to telephoto when I feel like I can't get a good picture from the wide angle. I didn't feel good about a combination of a 5x periscope lens with small CMOS. But after I took several photos, I found the image quality looks still acceptable on 6.7-inch iPhone screen. But the image quality is relatively poor when shooting at nighttime. All places with complex elements like leaves and water ripples which weaken the light receiving ability of CMOS. And the video quality is worse than photo when shooting at 5x. Switch the focal length when recording. There will be some parallax and frame drop when converting image quality. Among the few filters in iPhone, there is a very useful one. The contrasting color which looks like Fuji Classic negative film. It will reduce the saturation photo and add a little contrast and halation by yourself. That's what we're talking about. And you can adjust the set of photos at one time. It would be better if we can directly shoot with the filter covered. The 15 Pro Max portrait mode can now recognize not only humans, but also dogs and other animals.
I
don't know if it's due to the new A17 Pro chip. The visualization effect of the portrait is better than before. Very smooth transition field depth. And it looks quite natural too. There will be no inconsistent visualization where objects with the same focal plane. Anyway, the 5x optical zoom lens on iPhone 15 Pro Max has complemented the shortcomings of ultra-long focus on iPhone. But the overheating issue still exists when constantly taking photos or videos, as well as the other issue like ghost effect when shooting strong light sources. And those issues has been exist for centuries and never been properly fixed on iPhone. People are now even tired of complaining it. The Lightning port is now replaced by Type-C port on the entire 15 series. On 15 Pro Max, it is even USB 2.0. Therefore, the charging and transmission speed has significantly improved. Although we couldn't say that is a brilliant improvement, but finally, we don't have to prepare another cable for iPhone alone. At home, on your computer setup, headphones, mouse, phone, keyboard, they all share the same cable on your desk. Plug in the cable whichever needs to be charged. There will be no more messed cables, everything looks clean and neat. Business travel, shaver, laptop, earphone, mobile phone, you don't need to worry about different ports on different devices. iPhone's file management capabilities and authority limits have basically stopped iPhone from being a temporary hard drive. I barely use wired transmission once a year, unless I have a lot of high-capacity footage that need to be directed to computer for editing. Unfortunately, Apple didn't plan to complete the upgrade once for all. Despite the upgrade of Type-C port, but the charging efficiency remains fairly unchanged, which is almost the same with the last generation. To be more specific, that depends on what kind of cable and charger you have. But if you're rich, you can carry on the sustainable development idea of Apple by buying valuable original charger to ensure you can maintain the 20 watts fast charging experience. But the good thing is, the battery endurance of a Pro Max is still pretty awesome. There will be still around 40% battery left after a half-day moderate usage, and it is enough to use on bed before you put on charging. But the battery capacity is something fading away every day. You can have one-day endurance now, doesn't mean it would stay the same forever.
原神启动。
There's another significant change on iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is the Mute key is now replaced by Action button. This button contains 94 shortcuts, and you can customize a shortcut for the app you want. As for the gaming performance of A17 Pro, it hardly feels laggy when playing most games. But what I'm worrying about is that the thermal control is not good enough to support the full performance of the processor. After all, nowadays, games are heating up the phone a lot when playing, especially around the camera area. Can it really run the 3A games smoothly like Resident Evil they showed us in the press conference? We wouldn't know the answer until the end of October. People used to say that there are only two types of phone in the world. One is iPhone, and the other the others. It's not hard to imagine how amazing it once looks, how powerful it was, and how wonderful to operate on that for the first time. But we can't find these qualities on the expensive iPhone nowadays, which is so disappointing. And it is so meaningless like what we did, trying so hard to emphasize that it's a new iPhone. But at least we proved that Apple has slowed down their pace of creativity. And what's the consequence? We don't know. Titanium and aluminum gives 15 Pro Max lightweight without sacrificing the screen size. Although the super ceramic glass looks clean and durable, but still cannot against the daily subtle frictions. Just after one day we got it on hand, we have already noticed some scratches on our 15 and 15 Pro Max in different levels. The 5x telephoto lens is currently the longest optical zoom available in iPhone series. But you have to tolerate the noise and the image quality result from this periscope telephoto lens under poor light conditions. The iOS 17 is aesthetically pleasing and simple. The vast Apple ecosystem allows Apple devices to connect and roam around each other. But Apple could also leave annoying bugs in the early stage of the system. The functions we have to use long time on the other phones seems never gonna be on iPhone. For example, on such large Pro Max, you can still not return back by sliding on both sides of the edge. Not to mention the mini windows. No wonder everyone says that Apple has very adaptable users. If you're not going to switch the brand, and one on your hand is a pretty old model like iPhone 12, and in addition, having demands of imaging performance and with enough budget, the $1,199 starting price iPhone 15 Pro Max is acceptable. But if you don't have one of those above reasons of changing a new phone, then I recommend you to think twice. At last, the subjective overall score of iPhone 15 Pro Max, we give 7.25.